I want to have my normal life back.
The German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas has clearly shown his discontent with conducting diplomacy via video conferencing calls. And yet, for many, the notion of distance learning, working and living has become the norm. However, there appears to be a light at the end of the tunnel as European nations that have appeared to fare better than others when dealing with the outbreak have finally started to take measures to lift the lockdowns imposed on their people. One of the first is Germany, who appears to have reaped the benefits of a tight and organised lockdown, with around 7,500 deaths from a population of nearly 84 million people. With the restrictions being lifted, Germany are also aiming to opening the wider social aspects of its life, as well as the economic ones. One of the most surprising moves by the Germans is the decision to reopen the Bundesliga and allow football matches to resume, likely to be behind closed doors at first, but nonetheless a move in which many European nations have failed to take, with France, for example, having completely cancelled the season, awarding PSG with the title long before the season's end.
Oder vorletzter Punkt, Fußball haben wir uns auch geeinigt, glaube ich jetzt in einer vernünftigen Einigung. Wir wissen auch, dass das sehr kontrovers ist übrigens. Ich halte diesen Kompromiss für mehr als vertretbar. Ich kann aber nur an eines appellieren. Ich weiß, dass die Verantwortlichen in den Bundesliga-Vereinen alles tun werden, um Sicherheit zu erreichen. Aber es sollten auch Spieler, die sich unvernünftig verhalten, auch mit Konsequenzen rechnen müssen. Denn das war die Woche von dem einen Spieler von Hertha BSC schon ein schweres Eigentor für das Bemühen, Hygienemaßnahmen, die alle treffen wollen. Und es haben sich nicht nur normale Menschen an alle Hygienemaßnahmen zu halten, sondern auch diejenigen, die sehr, sehr viel verdienen und auch ein Privileg haben. Deswegen sollte das auch für alle gleichzeitig gelten.
The social and economic aspect of this particular action is vastly important as a feel-good factor for the German nation, economy and its people. There's no doubt that tensions have run high for business owners, workers, students and the whole population in general. Therefore, by bringing back something as important as football to the screens and lives of the German people, it will be a much-needed lift for all, both morally and financially, through television viewing rights. But has the rest of Europe been as efficient and managed to emulate the success of the Germans? The UK has still to decide in concrete terms as to how it will lift the lockdown when the time finally comes. Although Boris Johnson and his cabinet have announced plans, the UK still looks to be a long way off from reaching the achievements of Germany and other mainland European nations. The headlines concerning the UK do not make for easy reading for Johnson and his pals, as data shows that the number of deaths in the UK has now gone sailing past those of other European nations on the continent. It seems that the British government has once again failed its people. The handling of the situation by the UK has seen record numbers of people furloughed from their jobs, multiple claims for universal credit, and a surge in demand from people needing to use food banks in order to eat. Furthermore, on a social scale, the UK has seen a dramatic rise in domestic violence since the lockdown began, resulting in marriages ending, relationships collapsing, and above all, the loss of loved ones that could have been prevented if the government had taken action earlier. When we look elsewhere around Europe, not all have suffered the same woes as the UK, and many have indeed emulated the success of the Germans, with the likes of Denmark, Switzerland, and others all starting to emerge from the respective lockdowns due to efficiency from their governments and from the efforts of their people. But could the lifting of lockdowns still be too soon? For one expert, Professor Panchania from the University of Exeter in the UK, he questions the notion of why lockdowns were imposed in the first place and states that we must remember these key issues.
We need to collect information from several parameters, so it cannot be just one. So the evidence that we need to collect is exactly the answer to why we went into shutdown. So think about why did we go into shutdown, and then with respect to lifting shutdown, will we be in a position before we went into shutdown? That answers all the questions for us. So the answers are as follows. Will we be able to cope with an increase in number of cases in a clinical setting, in other words, in our hospitals? Will we be able to manage more cases in the community? Will our nursing homes, residential homes be able to cope? What about the schools? Do we have evidence, clear evidence, that children, whilst they have a mild illness, they are actually not bringing home the infection to their grandparents and parents. So we need all those questions answered before we feel we can start to lift the shutdown.